The employee entrance is in the alley. This door is for hotel guests. Richard Vance spoke loudly enough for the reporters and formally dressed guests to hear. The woman in the simple coat did not react, and the chief executive officer had no idea that he had just pushed the person with the power to decide his future out of his own ownership transfer ceremony. Sleet covered the steps of the Hawthorne Grand in white. Inside, crystal lights shone over rows of investors, lawyers, and important guests. Richard walked through the lobby, adjusting every name card because he wanted the ownership transfer ceremony to proceed without a single mistake. Amelia Grant arrived alone in a dark blue coat, wet shoes, and an old leather folder marked with the initials GM. No luxury vehicle, security guards, or assistants accompanied her. As Amelia passed through the revolving door, a wheel on Marcus Lee's luggage cart became trapped in a gap in the floor. The coffee container on the tray tipped over, splashing hot liquid across his wrist. The guests quickly moved out of the way. Amelia placed her folder on the floor, stopped the cart from overturning, and wrapped a handkerchief around the burn. "Hold your hand under cool water for at least 20 minutes, she said. "You need to report the accident immediately." Richard appeared. He did not ask whether Marcus was injured. His eyes moved from Amelia's wet shoes to the hand she was using to steady the cart. "Which temporary staffing team are you with?" "I have an appointment with Chairman Jonathan Hale." Richard looked toward the cameras behind her. "The employee entrance is in the alley. This door is for hotel guests." "You may check the list." A front desk employee approached and lowered her voice. "Sir, the chairman's list includes the name A. Grant." On the reception counter, Amelia also noticed a small card labeled Presentation Tier with 3 color categories. The employee quickly turned it face down when Amelia moved closer. A couple wearing old coats was also directed toward a separate counter, even though they were holding a confirmed reservation. That was Richard's opportunity to ask Amelia's full name. Instead, he looked at her unbranded coat and dismissed the information. "The new owner will arrive with a legal team. Do not allow an abbreviated name to disrupt the security process." He signaled to the guards. Amelia could have opened the folder and ended the humiliation immediately. Instead, she picked it up and turned toward the service hallway. "If this is the entrance you reserve for the people who make the hotel function," she said, "then I want to see it." At the employee entrance, more than 20 workers were standing in the cold wind because the time clock had malfunctioned. Richard still ordered the supervisor to record every one of them as late. Elena Ruiz stepped forward in protest. "They arrived on time. A broken machine is not their fault." "Would you like me to document you for refusing an order?" Richard asked. Elena did not move back. "I want their working hours recorded correctly." Amelia studied the silent faces around her. What had happened at the main entrance was no longer one insult directed at the wrong person. It was a pattern of power used against anyone who lacked the ability to fight back. Marcus was still holding his wrist, but his manager ordered him to return to work. Amelia took him to a sink, helped him complete the accident report, and told him to photograph both the burn and the clock on the wall. "Keep a copy before you submit it." Inside the service area, Dana Brooks hurried out of the Human Resources office. A black flash drive tied with red thread slipped from her files. Amelia bent down to pick it up, but Dana quickly pulled it away. "It is only a backup copy," Dana said. The fear in her eyes made the explanation sound more like a warning. They passed the old laundry area. Amelia stopped beside a locked door, her hand tightening around a brass key engraved with HG 214 inside her coat pocket. She knew that the narrow staircase behind the washing machines led directly to the conference floor, a route no ordinary guest would have known. Elena noticed the key appearing between Amelia's fingers. "Did you once work here?" "Someone in my family did." Amelia said nothing more. She remembered her mother's shoulders bending lower after every laundry shift and the complaint that had disappeared after an accident. But she had come that day to evaluate the hotel's future, not accuse anyone based only on an old wound. When Amelia entered the main lobby through the service corridor, Jonathan's assistant was already calling people in an attempt to find her. Richard saw her again near the press area. He did not ask why she knew the service route or why the name A. Grant had still not been verified. "Remove her before she ruins the ceremony," he ordered. The security guards moved forward. Marcus tried to speak, but his manager pulled him back. Elena stepped halfway in front of Amelia. Donna held the folder containing the flash drive tightly against her chest, as though she were struggling with a decision she had not yet found the courage to make. At that moment, the microphone on stage came to life. Jonathan Hale stepped forward, looked across the rows of important guests, and stopped when he saw Amelia. "The transfer documents have been completed," he said. "Grant Meridian Partners now owns 62% of the voting shares in the Hawthorne Grand." Richard froze. The hand he had been using to point toward the rear entrance slowly lowered. Jonathan smiled and extended one hand toward the woman standing beside the security employees. "Please welcome the person who has just purchased controlling ownership of the Hawthorne Grand, Miss Amelia Grant." Amelia walked toward the stage in complete silence. Richard had just realized that he had insulted the hotel's new owner. But something even more dangerous remained hidden inside the flash drive. Dana was gripping at the back of the lobby. Jonathan confirmed before the press that Amelia owned 62% of the hotel's voting shares. Richard's expression changed immediately. "Miss Grant, I sincerely apologize. This was only a misunderstanding involving our security procedures." Amelia looked at Marcus's hand, which was still wrapped in a towel. "A misunderstanding does not explain why an injured employee was denied care, why workers lost pay because the time clock malfunctioned, or why a name on the guest list was ignored because of someone's clothing." The crowd expected her to dismiss Richard on stage. She did not. "One personal insult is not enough for me to judge the ability of the entire management team. But what I have witnessed is enough to begin a formal review." She delayed confirmation of the current leadership team for 24 hours and ordered the release of every guest complaint, employee complaint, and resignation record from the previous 18 months. Richard still had an opportunity to be honest. Instead, he insisted there was no systemic problem, only a few employees who did not appreciate discipline. Rather than attend a private reception with investors, Amelia went to the employee break area. She did not promise promotions or distribute money. She asked what had happened, recorded the names of everyone involved, and promised not to reach conclusions before verifying the evidence. Marcus was sent for medical treatment while remaining on paid time. Amelia temporarily canceled every penalty connected to the broken time clock and invited Elena to serve as the employee representative during the review. Elena spread several work schedules across the table. Employees who filed complaints often had their hours reduced, were transferred to night shifts, or were reassigned without a clear operational reason. Marcus opened the shift log and pointed to handwritten instructions. Guest dressed inappropriately. Direct to secondary desk. Do not allow homeless people to appear in the lobby. Elena showed Amelia 3 complaints that had been closed on the same day without the employees' signatures. A laundry worker said a manager had once told her to remain silent if she wanted to keep her health insurance. Amelia understood that the system did not need to fire employees openly. It only needed to reduce their hours until anyone who spoke up was forced to leave. Resignations recorded as voluntary had quietly concealed a pattern of retaliation. Jonathan admitted that the board had received reports showing a sharp increase in employee turnover, but had accepted Richard's explanation that the labor market was unstable. The board's failure to investigate must also be documented, Amelia said. Ignoring a warning does not remove responsibility. Inside the Human Resources office, Richard closed the door and met privately with Dana. He ordered her to provide only the cases marked resolved. If this ownership transfer collapses, hundreds of people could lose their jobs, he said. You do not want a few unverified complaints destroying their livelihoods. Dana understood that it was not a direct threat, but Richard was using her fear. Her husband depended on medical insurance, and Dana herself had closed several files under pressure from Richard. He placed a revised summary in front of her. 17 serious cases had been removed. Replace the original with this version. When Dana left the office, the flash drive tied with red thread was once again in her hand. Amelia saw it, but did not pressure her to surrender it. Instead, she announced protections for anyone providing information and appointed Priya Shah, an independent compliance attorney, to supervise the chain of custody. Anyone who submits records will be protected from retaliation, Amelia said. But protection does not erase responsibility for previous wrongdoing. Late that afternoon, Dana found Priya inside a private conference room. She placed the flash drive inside a sealed evidence bag, signed the transfer record, and admitted that she had closed several complaints, even though she knew complete interviews had never been conducted. I was afraid of losing my job and my husband's medical coverage, Dana said. But my fear caused other people to lose their working hours. The flash drive contained emails, original complaints, staffing schedules, and a document titled Guest Presentation Matrix. The system allowed managers to estimate a guest's value according to clothing, luggage, and transportation, then direct anyone ranked lower to a secondary desk. Amelia did not release the information immediately. She instructed Priya to verify when each file had been created, who had edited it, and which electronic signatures were attached. Every record also had to be compared with the hotel's servers. Richard's humiliation of Amelia would not be allowed to replace evidence. The following morning, Richard presented the board with a clean report. According to his version, every complaint had been resolved. No retaliation had occurred, and the presentation tier system was merely a security traffic guideline. He claimed that if any records had been altered, Donna had acted independently without informing him. Priya entered the room and placed the server analysis in front of Jonathan. Richard's report had been edited after Amelia was publicly announced as the new owner. 17 files had disappeared from the submitted version, but the revision history still remained. Another email ordered Human Resources to clean the employment records before the ownership transfer. Richard kept his voice calm. Miss Brooks managed the data. She had access and a reason to conceal her own mistakes. The conference room door opened. Dana entered beside Priya, her face pale but her eyes steady. She placed the black flash drive tied with red thread in the center of the table. "No, Mr. Vance, I followed your orders, and this time I preserved the original records." Richard stared at the flash drive. He understood that he was no longer facing one isolated accusation. But would the evidence be enough to remove him? Or would Dana become the scapegoat for an entire system that had still not been fully exposed? The following morning, the lobby of the Hawthorne Grand became a public hearing room. Employee representatives, lawyers, investors, and members of the press sat across from the board. Amelia began with one clear requirement. No one will be judged guilty based only on an accusation. Richard received access to all the evidence, had a lawyer beside him, and was given the right to respond. Jonathan released the ownership transfer agreement and the resolution confirming that Amelia controlled the hotel and had the authority to propose replacing the chief executive officer. Richard stood. Miss Grant dressed like a poor person and arrived without notice to trap me. Amelia did not avoid the accusation. My unannounced arrival may have made employees feel that they were being secretly tested. I apologized to them for my responsibility in that. But I did not pretend to be poor. You decided my value according to my clothing. She placed the key marked HG 214 on the table. Her mother, Ruby Grant, had once worked in the laundry department of the Hawthorne Grand. After a workplace accident, Ruby's complaint disappeared, and she was forced to leave her job without receiving proper support. My mother's experience explains why this issue matters deeply to me, Amelia said. It is not evidence against Mr. Vance. The incident happened before his leadership. Today, we will rely only on verified records. Priya presented the results of comparing the flash drive with the hotel server backups. 43 complaints had been closed. Without complete interviews, 17 files had been removed from the ownership transfer report. The schedules of several employees had changed immediately after they spoke up. 5 emails carrying Richard's electronic signature proved that he had received warnings about retaliation and the classification of guests. One instruction ordered human resources to reduce employee noise before the ownership transfer. The editing history confirmed that the clean report had been created after Amelia's identity became known. Dana admitted that she had closed some files under Richard's direction and accepted that she could face disciplinary review. "I'm not innocent," she said. "I simply refuse to let my fear continue causing other people to lose their jobs." Elena provided the original work schedules. Marcus confirmed that instructions about judging clothing and luggage had been read aloud during shift meetings. The independent sources supported one another, preventing Richard from placing all responsibility on Donna. Richard argued that his policies had increased revenue and prevented security incidents. Amelia acknowledged that a hotel had a responsibility to protect its guests. But security had to be based on behavior, specific risks, and neutral verification procedures, not the price of someone's coat or the type of vehicle that person used. Jonathan stood before the employees. The board allowed attractive numbers to hide the people behind them. I received warnings about employee turnover but failed to investigate them fully. He announced that he would surrender his voting authority after the transition period. After Richard and his lawyer presented their final response, the board voted. His authority was terminated for concealing records, retaliating against employees who filed complaints, and providing misleading reports. His contract benefits were handled according to the agreement and the audit findings, not because he had insulted Amelia. Richard was not placed in handcuffs or publicly humiliated. He left the hotel through the main entrance under the supervision of his lawyer, the same entrance he had once believed was reserved only for people who were worthy. Dana received protection from retaliation because she cooperated with the investigation, but she was required to participate in an accountability and supervision program. Providing the evidence did not erase the files she had improperly closed. Amelia announced the elimination of the guest presentation matrix and introduced neutral security procedures for every guest. The hotel would audit wages and working hours, repay improper deductions, and create an independent complaint office. Employees would elect representatives to a workplace culture council. The employee entrance, break rooms, and time clocks would be repaired. Managers would be evaluated according to both revenue and employee retention. The labor audit would also expand into every department, so employees who had never felt safe enough to complain would finally have an opportunity to speak. Amelia did not personally promote Elena. The employees elected her as co-chairwoman of the Workplace Culture Council. Marcus entered the front desk training program and earned a new position through a transparent selection process. 3 months later, employee turnover had fallen, incorrect wages had been repaid, and guest satisfaction scores had increased. There were no mass dismissals, despite Richard's previous attempts to use that fear against the employees. Priya continued publishing regular reports on the progress of the reforms. Beside the service entrance, Amelia placed the key marked HG 214 inside a small glass frame. Below it were the words, "No door can reduce the value of the person who walks through it." During the reopening ceremony, Amelia did not stand alone on stage. Together with Elena, Marcus, and several longtime employees, she opened the main entrance to welcome the first guest, an elderly woman wearing a worn coat. Amelia had once watched her mother walk through the employee entrance with her shoulders lowered. Years later, she did not close that door to punish the people who had once stood on the other side. She transformed it into a place where no one would ever need to lower their head again. Power is not proven by deciding who deserves to enter through the main door. It is proven by protecting every person's dignity, no matter which door they use,